You prayed for it. You believed for it. You fasted, you cried, you held on longer than anyone else would have. And then it ended. And somewhere in the rubble of what you thought was your blessing, you asked God the one question you were almost afraid to say out loud. Did you even hear me? Stay with me, because what I'm about to share is going to completely shift the way you see that loss, that ending, that silence after the storm. What if the thing that broke you was actually God answering you? What if the heartbreak was the prayer coming true, just not in the form you expected? Here's something nobody tells you in Sunday school. Sometimes what we call our prayer is actually our fear dressed up in spiritual language. We pray, God, keep this person in my life, but what we mean is, God, I'm terrified of being alone. We pray, God, restore this relationship, but what we mean is, God, I don't trust that something better exists for me. We pray, God, fix this, but underneath it, we mean, God, I'm not sure you're good enough to replace this. And God, being a loving Father, doesn't always give us what we ask for. He gives us what we actually need, even when those two things look nothing alike. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives. James 4:2-3. This is not a rebuke, it's a revelation. God isn't punishing your prayer, He is purifying it. The heartbreak is the answer to the version of you that needed to grow, not the version of you that was comfortable. What God removes, He replaces, but never on your timeline. Look at the life of Abraham. God told him to leave everything he knew, his country, his people, his father's household, to go to a place God hadn't even fully revealed yet. If Abraham had recorded a voice note after that conversation, it might have sounded like grief, like loss, like God had taken everything familiar. But the removal was the blessing. The leaving was the arriving. Here's what I want you to sit with. God doesn't remove things from your life because He is careless. He removes them because He is a builder. And builders clear the site before they construct something extraordinary. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? Isaiah 43:19. The new thing cannot spring up in the same space the old thing occupied. The heartbreak had to happen, not because you failed, because God was making space. This is where it gets deeply personal, because most of us have two prayers running at the same time. The surface prayer, the one we say out loud, and the deep prayer, the one our soul is crying that we haven't even found words for yet. You might have been praying for the relationship to stay, but your deep prayer, the one you couldn't articulate, was, God, I want to feel truly loved. And He knew that person couldn't give you that, so He answered the deep prayer by removing the surface answer. You might have been praying for the job, the position, the title, but your deep prayer was, God, let me do work that actually matters. And He knew that role would have kept you busy but empty, so He let the door close. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. 1 Samuel 16:7. God answers the prayer of your heart, not always the prayer of your mouth. And sometimes those two things are asking for completely different things. Let's talk about something we don't discuss enough. Leah, the woman who was not chosen, the woman who was, by all accounts, the second option, the one Jacob never asked for. Imagine being Leah. Imagine waking up every day knowing the person lying next to you wishes you were someone else. That is a specific kind of heartbreak, the kind where you're present but unseen. But look at what God did. While Rachel, the loved, the chosen, the celebrated one, struggled, Leah was fruitful. And from Leah's lineage came Judah, and from Judah came the line of Jesus Christ. The woman who felt like the consolation prize was carrying the most important bloodline in human history. She didn't know it. She just kept showing up. She just kept trusting. She just kept going. Your rejection is not your conclusion. Sometimes the one the world overlooks is the one God is building his most important work through. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive. Genesis 29:31. God sees where you are not loved, and he moves specifically there. Grief is not the opposite of faith. It's the proof of it. Here's the part they skip over in most encouragement content. The part I want to sit in with you for a moment. It is okay to grieve what God removed. It is okay to cry over the answered prayer that looked like a closed door. Grief is not weakness. Grief is not lack of faith. Grief is what happens when something that mattered to you ends, and that mattering was real. Even Jesus wept. Not because he didn't believe in resurrection. He was about to perform one. He wept because grief is human, and he was fully human. He wept because loss deserves to be honored, even when restoration is coming. Jesus wept. John 11:35. You are allowed to be in pain about the thing God is redeeming. You don't have to perform peace you don't feel yet. The process is real. The grief is valid. And God is not waiting for you to stop crying before he starts working. He is working in the middle of your tears. Blessed are those who mourn. Not because mourning is the destination, but because God meets them there, and everyone he meets, he moves. So how do you actually live in this? How do you hold grief in one hand and trust in the other? Here's what it looks like practically. First, stop asking God to give it back. I know that's hard, but the moment you keep returning to what he removed, you're telling him you don't trust his judgment. Start asking instead, God, what are you building in the space this left? Second, look for the pattern. Think back. Has God ever removed something from your life that later you were grateful he took? Almost everyone, when they look honestly at their story, can find at least one moment where the loss became the gift. That pattern is not coincidence. That is character. Third, protect your peace during the process. Not every person needs to know what you're walking through. Some things God does in private. Some healings happen in hiddenness. Let the season be sacred before it becomes a story. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. All things. Not some things, not the comfortable things, all things, including the heartbreak that still has no explanation, including the prayer that looks unanswered, including the loss you are still holding. God is working in it, not around it, in it. So let me close with this. If you are in the middle of a heartbreak right now, if you are holding the pieces of something you prayed would stay, I want you to consider a different question. Not, why did this happen to me? But what is God saying yes to that required him to say no to this? The heartbreak is not the end of the story. It might be the most important chapter in it. You are not forgotten. You are not punished. You are not too broken to be restored. You are a woman in the middle of her answered prayer, even if it doesn't look anything like what you expected. Trust the one who sees the full picture when you can only see the broken piece in your hand. If this message found you at exactly the right time, and I believe it did, drop in the comments, "My heartbreak was my answered prayer." And if someone in your life needs to hear this today, share this with them. God bless you.